And welcome to our February edition of Sports Highlights right here on NNPS TV. A couple significant comments here. This is our 25th anniversary of the program as well, started in February of 1992. And this is Black History Month. We want to thank everybody who's been involved throughout the years on all decades on that worthy cause. We want to welcome our guest today. It is Walt Ruff, the media manager for the Norfolk Admirals, and Tony White, the head wrestling coach at Warwick High School in the second segment, all presented by Fazoli's, who's catering our show for the month of February. And thank you for all they do during our sporting events as well. Our program airs on Mondays at 7 a.m., 2 p.m., and 7 p.m., weekends at 9 a.m., on demand, anytime on nnpstv.com and archived on YouTube as well. Let's welcome familiar face, Walt Ruff, media manager of the Norfolk Admirals in your first year. Good to see you.
Greg, thank you so much for having me on.
Very good. Tell us how the job got started for you.
Yeah, actually last year I was working down in Fort Worth, Texas with a junior hockey program. And over the summer, the opportunity popped up. You know, in my position, it's just like your player as well. You want to keep climbing up the ladder. And I was fortunate enough to be presented with the opportunity to move up to the ECHL level. And sure enough, here I am.
The Admirals have had a rich history since the 80s. Of course, they played at a lot of different levels, the ECHL and the AHL.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been very much so a transitional period for the organization as of late, going just back down from the AHL to the ECHL. But all good things because of that rich tradition in the previous ECHL years back during the 80s and 90s. We're not looking at it as a bad thing by any means.
Talk about your background in education, and were you saying one day in college, I want to be a general manager of a hockey team one day?
I don't know if ever it's taken a few twists and turns, but while studying mass media and production at Temple University in Philadelphia, I think I've always had this affiliation with the sport of hockey, and I knew that playing growing up, I would never be good enough to make it to the pros, but I had to stay involved in the game in some way, shape, or form, and I was fortunate enough, again, to have the ability to take that path, and sure enough, here I am, and I'm very appreciative of it.
Hockey is a different sport because it starts in the fall, but it carries on the heavy months of the winter. Admirals a few years ago won the championship, and it went to the spring and the summer almost.
Yeah, it definitely does. You know, you see all the way up at the NHL level, you've got the Stanley Cup playoffs running into almost the middle of June sometimes, and with, hockey being denoted a winter sport, it's something rather non-traditional that it carries over during that similar time frame. But again, similar to basketball and those sort of things, we run from the fall all the way to the spring and maybe even the summer if our team's lucky enough to make it deep into the playoffs.
So what's going on in this month of February?
February is a really big month for the Admirals. We've got a couple dates, big dates on the road, but a couple big dates at home as well. Couple big promotions that we're looking forward to. January was a very successful month with some of our promotions such as Pucks and Paws and our Pink in the Rink supporting Susan G. Komen Tidewater breast cancer awareness. February and March we really start turning up that promo schedule because of things such as high school football being now completed and over with. We love seeing the bigger crowds coming in, and we know the onus is on us to draw those crowds in.
It's really, you talk about what to do in Hampton Roads, and the Admirals hockey has been a staple for years.
Yeah, it certainly has been, and we're appreciative that there have been times where it looked like, especially when the organization was transitioning from the AHL to the ECHL, there was, of course, the rumor mill going around that Admirals hockey was going away. And we know that, again, it's on us to spread the word and get the word out there that we are for certain still here despite the changing of leagues, and just really reaching out to this rich community that we have here. And we know there are people that enjoyed the Admirals' heyday back in the 90s during all the championships, and we really would love to bring them all back in now and let them know that, hey, just because we may have taken a step from league to league, that's not a bad thing at all.
Right, talking to Walt Ruff, he is the media manager of the Norfolk Admirals. Of course, they play at the Norfolk Scope, and that place has got a lot of history as well.
It definitely does, and again, it's just so it's something to be proud of, knowing that you can go into that building and think, wow, you can rattle off a laundry list of names of guys who have played in that facility, not only when it comes to hockey, but, just speaking in terms of building, we're very thankful to be there because of all of the events that come through there that people may know when you come to an event inside Scope, and perhaps you didn't know about the Admirals, you may now, because when you're in that facility, you see the Admirals name and the Admirals brand, or vice versa. If you come to an Admirals game and you say, oh wow, I didn't know XYZ was coming here for a concert. We love being as a part of the multi-facet building, and we think it's a great thing.
Right. The Circus has been there. The Squires have been there. The MEAC basketball tournament. So really there's something for everyone, but it's always been a consistent home for the Admirals. They played in other places, like a little bit in the Hampton Coliseum, but for the most part, Norfolk Scope.
Yeah, definitely. And we're glad that we can have fans resonating with that the Admirals and Scope are one and the same. It's always, you say that there's a lot of things going on. It's always interesting to me when you see sometimes in the teams on the road, you see the ice being covered up, and you can go from a fresh sheet of ice to a massive concert stage preparing to host almost 10,000 people just a couple of hours later. I think that's a fascinating aspect, and there really is something for everyone down at Scope.
Like at the Verizon Center in D.C., they have the Capitals and the Wizards sometimes in 2 basketball games in one night. How do you keep it so cool, the actual ice?
Well, the facility staff does a remarkable job of making sure that they put a couple coats down on top of the ice. You take out all the glass on the sides, and then you get it down, you put padding on, and then a coat, and then another coat of padding, just so that way the ice actually stays there, and you kind of almost build this platform over top where the basketball court comes in. And I'm sure you've heard incidents over the years of where in these multi-platform facilities that there might be some substance on the floor from the ice underneath. We've all heard those horror stories, but I think our staff does a phenomenal job, and that's a big kudos to the city of Norfolk for providing people who really put the time and the effort into making sure that all of these events go off without a hitch, and we don't have any of those incidents, knock on wood, taking place at Scope.
That's happened. That's happened. But are you telling me that the ice is always there? Is it down during the summer?
Not during the summer. It does come out at the end of the Admiral season, but we've got all these basketball events coming in during the winter season because the NBA and the NHL, running that same seasonal format. We were fortunate enough, we had the Holiday Classic there down at Scope a couple weeks ago, and as you mentioned with MEAC, when MEAC is there, the ice is there as well. You just, it's rather interesting, right? You don't, think of where does it go? Do they melt it down? And while today's technology provides ice making to be accumulated quicker than it has in years past, it's not a weeks on end stretch thing to do. The staff can build it in a couple hours, but it is for sure still there. And it's mind-blowing to think that you have these amazingly talented basketball players, and just a couple inches below there's a surface of ice, but you would never know.
They're figure skating, basically. Talking to Walt Ruff, the Norfolk Admirals. You can hear Walt every Wednesday at 12:35 on 1650 AM during Sports Scene. We talk about the lay of the land on the Admirals, and let's talk about the team, the roster. Like you said, it's always moving parts. It's nice to keep a consistent coaching staff, but that's not easy either.
Absolutely, and at this level of the ECHL, you're at the mercy of several aspects. You have up top the Top Dog, the parent club, which we are currently affiliated with the Edmonton Oilers in Western Canada. So you have guys who the Oilers assign to us. And then you have our American Hockey League affiliate, the next step up out in Bakersfield, California, who also assigns guys to us. And then you kind of have your own pool of Admirals players, per se, that our coaching staff is responsible for bringing in. So you're juggling a couple balls at this level, and it does present a very difficult task for the coaching staff to do, hence why we had to make the coaching change at the end of November. There wasn't quite the success that we had hoped for to start the year. But again, you always think about how coaches make this quite a bit of money, and it really is a difficult task on them, because you're not only managing who is on your roster, but you also need to be coaching them, and you're playing multiple fiddles, so it's a big testament to them.
All right, like I always ask you, full social media circles.
Absolutely. So for the Admirals, it's pretty standard across the board. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Norfolk Admirals. On Facebook, you've got the space in between, but other than that, username Norfolk Admirals all across the board.
Is there one that you take precedence over the other? It seems like the media recognizes Twitter first. Facebook and kind of Instagram are kind of like tied for second. Snapchat, not quite up to that level.
I think they all have their own appeal.
Right.
You can reach, because of Facebook's past. You can probably reach more people on there. But again, in the new media era, we know Twitter rules.
Right.
And that's why it's so important to connect on those things. And Instagram as well. I think we're starting to see the younger generation really displaying their preference to that. So it's important to manage all of those. And I think you can get something each individually out of everyone.
Are there times, Walt, that you said, look, I'm just going to do Twitter tonight and the rest can take a break, especially on the road, I guess?
I think that, again, going back to each individual platform
right.
having its own means, in the game, Twitter, sure, we're funneling updates left and right. What we do is on Facebook, we'll post an update at the end of each period. So that way we're not clogging people's timelines. And you can only get so much post reach out of each individual thing that you post each night. Whereas Twitter, there's no, with the chronological order of tweets coming in, that's certainly where we try and hit our home run in-game. And then Instagram, we'll post at the end of the night. I know you can get away with multiple functions in terms of posting perhaps at the end of each period as well, but we stick with the final score on there.
Yeah, you talk about where you're from in Pennsylvania, and of course the Capitals, the Flyers, the Rangers, the Islanders, so forth in that area. Hockey's ingrained, in local colleges a lot, even some high schools too, correct?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice to see some of that down here?
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the things I'm still trying to learn with, just being new to this area, as new as September. There is certainly that rich history of hockey in the Northeast, and the more that we can try and bring it down to this area, it's phenomenal. You see all these recent hockey hotbeds popping up with USA Hockey reporting increased numbers in places you wouldn't specifically think, such as Florida and Texas these days. Hockey numbers are certainly on the rise in non-traditional markets, and that can be attributed to the success of teams from Florida and the Dallas Stars in Texas. And that's where we as the Admirals are looking and thinking, how can we really make this our own and develop the numbers on a rise here? It's our responsibility as the professional hockey team to do our part there.
NorfolkAdmirals.com has more information. Total number of home games and away games in typical seasons, how many?
NorfolkAdmirals.com is indeed the place to go. We run 72 home games, 36 at home, 36 on the road. Just passed our halfway mark a couple weeks ago, and it's time to start turning up towards the end of the year, which the regular season comes to a conclusion on April 8th and 9th at Scope.
If nothing else, go to that schedule on the website.
Absolutely. The website's got everything you need.
All right, we'll talk to you on Sports Scene. Glad to have you on Sports Highlights.
Greg, thank you so much for having me.
And we'll tweet this show out as well. All right, want to thank Walt Ruff right there from the Norfolk Admirals. The media manager of the Norfolk Admirals had a rich tradition since the late 80s in Hampton Roads. Truly a jewel event and something fun for the entire family right here. At Greg Bick on Twitter. We'll continue with Tony White, the head wrestling coach of one of our own schools, Warwick High School in Newport News, after these messages.
You don't have to change just to fit in. You don't have to apologize for who you are. Just be yourself, and I promise people will enjoy it. Just be yourself. Be your real, imperfect, flawed, quirky, weird, beautiful, and magical person you are. Be yourself. Because everyone else is already taken. Just be you.
Hi, my name is Barbara Smith, and I'm with the Newport News Public Schools Department of Transportation. At the bus stop, students should stand away from the road in an orderly fashion and always be mindful of other people's property. While on the school bus, students should always behave, keeping their hands, heads, and any other objects inside the bus so as not to distract the driver from keeping their eyes on the road. Motorists must stop for a school bus and remain stopped until the bus's lights are off and begins to move again. Here at Transportation, our number one objective is the safety of the children.
And welcome back to our second segment of our February edition of Sports Highlights. For more, log on to nnpstv.com, at Greg Bick on Twitter. Hope you enjoyed our first guest, Walt Ruff, the media manager for the Norfolk Admirals, all presented by Fazoli's. Let's welcome, you saw him on our telecast of Heritage, Menchville and Denby in wrestling, the head coach of the Warwick Raiders in wrestling, Mr. Tony White. Good to see you, Tony.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Very good. How did you get involved in wrestling?
I started wrestling in 8th grade, and I was a decent wrestler. I was never a great wrestler, but I had a love and a passion for it. Coach Jacobs, Tom Jacobs, longtime Peninsula District coach, was my coach, and then I went to the apprentice school to wrestle, and while I was there, I tore my ACL. And Lawrence Bowman, another great wrestler here in the Peninsula from Bethel, he was coaching Warwick High School at the time and asked me if I'd be interested in come helping him. And from that point on, I've been coaching every year since.
And the current coach of the apprentice school, Shu, is about ready to retire.
That's right.
Talk about his legacy and what he meant to you.
Oh, well, I quite honestly, he was just a legend, as you say. When I was wrestling, I think he started on the Peninsula right in the middle to late 70s. And he coached at Denby, he coached at Matthews. I mentioned not too long ago when we spoke that he was the assistant to Rocky Trudgeon at Lafayette, but in fact he was he helped VMI when Rocky Trudgeon was there, not actually at Lafayette. So, but yeah, great guy, continues to be a great guy, and produces champion after champion.
I remember my mom was at Bethel, the wrestling matches, you could hear them with canes on the bleachers, really big in the 70s.
Yeah.
Pecoson's always been good. The Chesapeake schools have always been a step ahead. What is it about our area that just certain pockets seem to do well, and not necessarily all 5 Newport News schools or all 4 Hampton schools?
Well, I'll just give you a real quick history. In the early to mid 70s, this area was the best in the state, to include Chesapeake and Northern Virginia. For instance, I believe it was 76, Menchville won a state title. In 77, Bethel won a state title, and Tabb High School. And then I believe it was 75 where Pecosin won a state title. Well, all those are within, 2 or 3 miles of each other? And right in that vicinity, the best wrestling was here. Since then, they've taken wrestling out of the middle schools, and so there's been a big falling off because there are some areas where you can wrestle in a youth, and then no middle school, and then high school. So there's that gap. And during that gap, what happens is these kids that come up wrestling, they end up playing other sports, and because it's available to them. And some of them come back in high school to wrestle, and some of them don't. But real quick, I'd like to share. I've been working really close with some school board members who have taken a great interest in bringing back middle school and even youth sports at the elementary grades. And Doug Brown has headed that up at the school board, and Gary Hunter and Marvin Douglas have kind of fell right in behind. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that the last school board member, every member was actually shaking their head, let's do this. So we're a ways away from making that happen, but I'm really excited that this stuff is happening.
Mr. Bruce Scott and Mr. Lapoli, what have those 2 names meant to you?
Wow, again, 2 legends. Bruce Scott, who's now at Kecoughtan, I think he was planning on retiring, but when Ron Vecchione, I believe is his last name, great coach at Kecoughtan, when he stepped down this year, it was kind of a surprise. And they really were looking for a coach to fill his shoes. They were pretty big shoes. And Coach Scott was called, and he didn't want to do it. But when nobody else stepped up, he said, I tell you what, I can't see a Peninsula team going down like this, especially one that has been successful as Kecoughtan in the last few years. So he stepped right up, and he's doing a great job with Kecoughtan. Frank Lapoli, who coached at Bethel, and he's actually the one that took him to a state title in '77. And I tell you, right now he's over in Virginia Beach, and he's working with Team Virginia with the youth, and he's just doing a fabulous job. And I think he's been in the sport now for probably close to 50 years, just like Coach Scott.
Right, Coach Scott, Coach Ferguson when I was in high school, and Coach Lapoli has been synonymous with wrestling in both sides of the water and throughout the entire state as well. As we're talking to the head wrestling coach of Warwick High School, Tony White. What do you think about our TV broadcast?
I thought it was fun. It was a great time. And I tell you, it's exciting since the Peninsula District coaches came together and created the Peninsula District Coaches Association, which is all of the Peninsula District coaches, as well as York High School coach and Smithfield High School coach. We've come together and really shared ideas on how to build these numbers and excite these kids about the sport that we love so much. And it was evident the other night when we were there.
Right. All right, let's talk about a couple things, too. Over the years, especially when you were in high school, the weight issue, trying to make weight. Explain that concept, and why has it been so dramatic over the years? Still is to this day, technically.
Sure. Well, years ago, as we spoke the other night, there was a lack of education, a lack of knowledge on what you're doing to your body when you starve it of water and nutrients. And but it was the way of the land. It was the way everybody wrestled. And so the state has I believe it was 1995 when they came in and said, hey, let's revamp how we're doing this, and let's control the weight program. And since then, they've instilled a weight program that only allows you to lose 1.5% of your weight per week. I think it's a great program. It's tough because the old style coaches really want you to drop that weight and go forward, but they call it bouncing, when you lose a lot of weight and gain a lot of weight. And it's taken the bouncing out of wrestling. And I tell you, the medical side of things has eased. There hasn't been nowhere near as many medical issues because of losing the weight. And quite honestly, the performance is much better because the kids are totally hydrated.
How'd your team do overall this year, according to you?
Well, not too bad. We're at about a 75% win rate. We've got 5 wily little veterans, and then we have 30 brand new kids to the sport. So being at that high win rate, we're doing pretty good. And right now we're getting ready to go to the conference and make some noise.
Well, part of the thing, too, is like you're the solo head coach of the wrestling program. To me, it's kind of hard to have 2 bosses. It's hard to answer somebody. It's hard to look over your shoulder. Is that an issue with dual coaching? Because you're not going to see that. You're not going to see Mike Smith say, well, I want somebody else to help me coach, except for the assistant coaches. You're not going to see it in basketball. You're not going to see it in baseball. That's a little bit of a perception with wrestling that it takes 2 for a small sport.
Well, I'll tell you, Denby seems to be making that work with Coach Moeller and Coach Hill. They are co-head coaches, and it works for them. I don't know that it would ever work for me. I mean, most wrestlers have a little bit of an ego, and I guess maybe I'm one as well. But I try to keep that at a minimum. But I have some great assistant coaches, and Coach Norton and Coach Gates, great guys. And I tell you what, I couldn't do anything without them.
Well, let me ask you, the Virginia Duels were already successful. I know you're looking ahead to January of 2018 already. Great event. Not all the Newport News schools or Hampton schools are there, yet it's on the peninsula. And it's been bigger in the past, and hopefully it'll get bigger again in the future, too. Talk about the Duels for a second.
Well, I'll tell you, it's some of the best wrestling in the country. We were so fortunate and blessed to have been asked as an invite to come and wrestle this year in the American division. We took it on the chin a couple of times, but we were proud to represent Newport News and Warwick High School. Our kids, it was a great learning moment for them, and it shared and it created memories that they'll have for a lifetime.
Now, how much of this do you hear until this day? I know you heard it back when you were in high school and you were a kid. Well, oh yeah, I know about wrestling. I know about Blackjack Mulligan. I know about Ric Flair. I know about Greg Valentine. I know about his daddy, Johnny Valentine, Paul Jones, Wahoo McDaniel. Are you still fighting that battle with the WWE, UFC, and the other wrestling organizations?
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, quite honestly, like I said before, Newport News has lost that feeder program, the one that Doug Brown is trying to bring back. We've lost the middle school program. We don't get kids wrestling unless they're move-ins or transfers from other areas. We usually don't get kids that have wrestled before. So the first time in 8th or 9th grade, some even as late as 10th or 11th, they're coming in, they don't have a clue. They haven't even seen a wrestling match. So quite honestly, the only ones on TV are the WWE. And yeah, every year we
I'm talking even with your friends and your neighbors too, that you're still fighting that battle. It's like, are you Ric Flair's manager or something?
Yeah, right. Well, I would love to say that we have become so popular that everybody knows what we do in a scholastic style of wrestling, but quite honestly, that's not true. There are some that look at freestyle and Greco, our Olympic sports, and follow that, so they understand that there is another type of wrestling out there. But by and far, WWE is what we fight.
Who's the most consistent program in the state year in and year out? Whether it's here or somewhere else in the state, you know they're going to be good.
Wow. Well, quite honestly, I think Poquoson is just a solid program year in, year out. Eric Decker's done a great job with that. And the Peninsula Wrestling Association as a whole, which is hosted out of Poquoson, is really got a great fan base, and we look forward to working with those guys every year.
How will it evolve in the future of the entire sport, do you think? Is it a matter of getting younger people involved, maybe in camps during the summer? Are college camps important to you? And what colleges are good in wrestling as well around this area?
Well, I'll tell you, summer workouts create the winter champions. So 2 weeks after we finish in March 1st, we're going to kick off our off-season program, which would include weightlifting, conditioning, and of course wrestling at the Peninsula Wrestling Association. So as far as camps go, we have in the past, the other teams that I've coached, not yet at Warwick, but our fundraising through sponsorships, which we are so glad to have, this year we plan on going to Virginia Tech. And Virginia Tech right now is by and far, I mean, they're number 5 in the country, but they're in it to win it.
And of course, wrestling is something for everyone. And it's all about educating and, and having good student athletes with a good attitude like we've talked about. If you don't have a good attitude, that can affect you right there on the floor. You'll see it pretty obvious.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, very good. Tony White, thank you very much for joining us on the February edition. All the best to your team. And I know you eat, drink, and sleep wrestling. It's not just, you lace it up in the fall and put the shoes back, in next summer or next fall, whatever. It's year round for you, correct?
That's right, year round.
Very good. All right, Tony White's brother also wrestled for Menchville, correct?
I'm sorry?
Your brother also wrestled?
Oh, yes, Nick White.
Very good, very good. All right, folks, hope you enjoyed our February edition, our award-winning show honored by the City Council last year as well. And, of course, thank Ray Price, his wonderful students that work on this show each and every month right here, whether on site or on location as well. I want to thank our great guests again, the media manager for the Norfolk Admirals, Mr. Walt Ruff, and Tony White, the very successful head wrestling coach at Warwick High School. At Greg Bick on Twitter. For more, log on to nnpstv.com. For Ray Price, I'm Greg Pickaveris. Happy February, and we'll talk to you soon.